It's what you hearing. It's what you hearing. Listen. It's what you hearing. Listen. It's what you hearing. Listen. X gon' give it to you. What? Wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock, knock. Open up the door. It's real. With the non-stop pop-up.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fantasy Football X Factor podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Today we'll be diving into the Cleveland Browns. Typically, you know how I do the team preview, guys, from 2017. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to waste your time. So, listen, Todd Haley's there, Tyrod Taylor's there, Jarvis Landry, Carlos Hyde, you name it. All these changes that are going on. Last season, let's just throw it out the window. The one area I do want to focus on from last season is the offensive line. So this is the foundation piece. They finished 4th in pass blocking last year. They finished 16th in run blocking and 14th in yards before contact. This year, they're ranked 14th according to Pro Football Focus's 2018 offensive line ranking. So they're right in the middle. So the thing is Joe Thomas is probably the only blemish on the resume. They had an all-star offseason. You know, it's a little eerie of what the Eagles did a couple years back, but I think Todd Haley brings some stability there. And I think Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback brings some stability as well. But Joe Thomas retiring is the only blemish on the resume for the Browns this offseason. They brought in Chris Hubbard. He's actually the backup swing tackle for the Steelers. He was ranked 39th last year in Pro Football Focus rankings. He's a nice little grade for them on the right side. Left side, they're going to kick their left guard out. So that's going to be interesting to say the least. They did draft a young kid out of Austin Corbett. He's going to be their guard, and they're going to kick Joel Benito out to the left side. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But, you know, I think the offensive line has a chance to be a top 15, top 20. You know, it's going to be good. So obviously in the top 20, possibly top 15. Pro Football Focus sees it that way. So I think that's good news for the rest of the team. So let's talk about Todd Haley. So notable coaching change. Todd Haley comes in, and listen, I'll tell you right now, this is going to be the Erhardt Perkins offense. This isn't going to be Hugh Jackson's West Coast offense. And the reason why I know that is because if you listen to Hard Knocks, you heard Baker Mayfield on Hard Knocks call a play towards Todd Haley. He used 2 words, and that's the staple of the Erhardt Perkins offense, guys. So it's not like Spider 2 wide banana in the West Coast offense. It's the Erhardt Perkins offense. And the reason why that's important to know is because of how that works. If you didn't listen to my Colts podcast, I talk in more detail about the Erhardt Perkins offense and the importance of that. But, you know, this guys, it's gonna be good things for Jarvis Landry, especially. I view him as a top 15 wide receiver this year. It'll be great news for Carlos Hyde. I see him as a true bell cow. He's gonna monopolize touches in this backfield. That's how they like to operate, and I think he's gonna get the shot to do that. Josh Gordon still has a great, you know, there's a track record for number 2 receivers. We'll talk about that, and the tight ends. Even the tight end position has an opportunity as well because of the way this offense operates. So, what's important to know? So I did take a look at the red zone statistics. This team, so the Steelers from 2012 to 2017 under Todd Haley finished 6th in plays, 8th in touchdowns, and they're very pass heavy. So they're actually 58% pass to 42% run in the red zone. You know, they're going to pass first in the red zone over run, so that's going to help the guys like Tyrod Taylor, especially if there's moments where he needs to scramble. I think Tyrod Taylor is a fantastic pick this year, especially if you're streaming quarterback. Inside the 5-yard line, the pass-to-run ratio was 54% pass to run. So once again, it was more pass to run. You know, we did see that in the preseason when they went out in the goal line, but I'm not going to look into that too much because I think they were just trying plays out. It's the preseason. They wanted to see if they can throw the fade up to Jarvis Landry. I think when it comes down to it, they're going to ram that rock, run the ball on the goal line. So I think they were just trying to test things out. So who was the main beneficiaries of this? So Antonio Brown blew everybody away. Of course, he had 35 targets over that span. And then it was Heath Miller. Heath Miller only played there from 2012 to 2015, but he had 19 red zone targets. So the tight end was featured in the red zone, which is great news for David Njoku. And then it was Le'Veon Bell. So guys like Carlos Hyde are going to have opportunities in the goal line, especially inside the 5. So I think that's great news for him. But the good news is, guys, we do have history of seeing Todd Haley handle 2 premier wide receivers. We'll touch on that in a second. So the passing game to me, really the biggest thing is the arrival of what's going to give. Is it going to be Tyrod Taylor and his low passing attempts, or is it going to be Todd Haley's offenses? So since Todd Haley took over as a play caller, he didn't reach 500 passing attempts only once in his career. Tyrod Taylor's highest was 450. So there's something's going to give. He's going to get more volume this year. You're going to see him closer to 5, maybe even 515 range. Even in the one season that Todd Haley didn't reach that goal, they ran the ball 550 times. It was an insane amount of running attempts. I don't expect this offense to run the ball 550 times. That's the lone season that Todd Haley did not actually, exceed 500 attempts in a season. So I expect Tyrod Taylor's floor now to go higher because he's going to go from 450 to 500. He's going to get anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 attempts more a game in this offense, which is going to help. He does have 2 top 7 finishes in 2015 and 2016 because of his scrambling ability. He finishes the QB 19 last year, but that team was just, they didn't want him. I think you're gonna see an offense that's gonna really, be built around supporting Tyrod Taylor, and he has the best talent of his career. We talked about, he finished as a top 10 in QBR the 2015 season when he had Sammy Watkins, a healthy Sammy Watkins. So I think when he has the talent, his ability to be, some guys aren't able to elevate talent around them. They need good players, and I think now he has it. He has a good offensive line. He could shine this year. Biggest strengths are play action and deep passing. The great news is the deep passing part. Todd Haley's version of the Erhardt Perkins offense, they throw the ball downfield. The play action, Ben Roethlisberger did not. He actually was one of the very few quarterbacks that didn't use play action much with Big Ben. It was surprising with the Le'Veon Bell, but it's just not a staple in his offense. But the deep passing I like. So the question is obviously that benefits Josh Gordon over Jarvis Landry. So, you're asking why. Well, you're going to have to wait because we're going to go over running backs next. Obviously, I want to touch on Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is going to be the future, but Tyrod Taylor's the guy now, guys. And you know what? There's the fantasy footballers that made a bet if he'll play over 8 games. I expect him to play over 8 games because they're going to contend for a playoff spot. I think they're going to look at an 8-8 record. They're going to be competitive, and they need to be competitive if Hugh Jackson wants to keep his job. So they're going to keep in Tyrod Taylor for a long time. So I expect him to play pretty much most of the season. But if you're drafting late and you want a late-round quarterback, guys, Tyrod Taylor is one of the best. So rushing. They lost Crowell last year. Crowell is giving up 206 carries and 42 targets. So, just the RB1 in this offense has got 248 touches. Carlos Hyde comes in, guys. Right now he's being drafted after the RB30 spot. Last year Crowell finished as the RB41 in points per game, but he finished as RB31 overall. So right now today, Carlos Hyde is actually rising. He rose all the way up to the 5th round. And that's the great news is because he was being drafted at his floor in the 7th. I think now he's going right where he should be. But I also am bullish on Hyde for many, many reasons. Number one is the fact that in Todd Haley's offense, 8 times he has had an RB1 since 2007. So, there's between Edgerrin James to Le'Veon Bell, and in between is Jamal Charles. He also had Thomas Jones, it was an RB2 one season. So these guys get volume, they get touches, and I expect the biggest thing too is, like I talked about in my previous podcast with the Colts, these guys hold back rookies. They did it to Jamal Charles. He was playing behind Larry Johnson. Remember I talked about the fact that he averaged 2.9 yards per carry that season, Larry Johnson, but they still gave him the ball until he got hurt in week 7. He was done for this season. That's when Jamal Charles finally took off. They hold back rookies. Nick Chubb is not going to contend for this job. I'm sorry, you hear for first. Duke Johnson might take some touches away, but this is Carlos Hyde's backfield. He should be drafted as so. Go ahead, take him in the 5th round. I love him there. So the receiving. Now, my biggest thing is this. I'm a big Jarvis Landry guy. So Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon, David Njoku are the notable names, and then Antonio Callaway, obviously, coming in the 4th round. But this offense typically supports 3 pass catchers, it doesn't matter what pass catcher. So the Erhardt Perkins offense has the ability to have a wide receiver, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a running back. We saw it with Todd Haley. He used Le'Veon Bell like a wide receiver. Le'Veon Bell was the number 3 wide receiver in this offense. Some years it was Antonio Brown and Mike Wallace, and then it was Heath Miller. And then Heath Miller left, and Le'Veon Bell took the next step. And last year it was Juju Smith-Schuster. So we've seen this kind of adapt to who can be the pass catcher. I don't expect Carlos Hyde to take over like a Le'Veon Bell. So that opens up a true 3rd option, and that could be Njoku. And I think Njoku is a great pick as a borderline tight end 1. But this offense is going to run through Jarvis Landry. This is something that you guys need to understand, is that he played under the Erhardt Perkins offense in Miami with Adam Gase. What does that mean? So he knows the offense better than Josh Gordon. He knows the offense better than Tyrod Taylor. He knows this offense better than every other player on the Browns. If you can realize this, he's coming into the new team with more experience in this type of offense than the guys around him. So this is a different situation than we normally see. He is not just some random wide receiver coming from a different offense to a team that has a stable offense already in place. Todd Haley is bringing his offense over, which is the same type of offense that was run by Adam Gase in Miami. So this is great news for Landry because he has more now with Josh Gordon not being there early in the training camp process. Jarvis Landry is the target hog, and here's other reasons why I believe in him so much. So under Todd Haley, his slot wide receivers have a better yards per reception than Gase does. So in Adam Gase's version of the Erhardt Perkins offense, his combination of routes he puts in that offense, the slot receivers run higher percentage routes, but they don't give you the higher yards. So we saw this with Wes Welker. So when he was the offensive coordinator in Denver, Wes Welker had much lower yards per reception. His best seasons, he had much higher yards per reception in New England. One of his seasons, he had a decent yards per reception, but we saw the fact that this offense has a lower yards per reception to the slot. In Todd Haley's version of this offense, they go downfield a lot. So in 2015, Jarvis Landry had 18 targets of 20 yards or more downfield. That was 11% of his targets. In 2016 and 2017, he had 8 and 5. That was between 4 and 5% of his true targets. I took a look at the primary slot receivers. Marcus Wheaton had 17 targets, which was 22% of his target share. Eli Rogers had 9 receptions for 9 targets for 13%, and Juju Smith-Schuster had 11 targets in the slot as the primary slot receiver of 20 yards more downfield, and that was 14%. So I know that was a lot of numbers. So in that span, Jarvis Landry, keep in mind, these guys are secondary receivers. Jarvis Landry had 18, 8, and 5. So it comes out to 31 targets in 3 seasons. But it was less than 10% of his total target share of targets traveling 20 yards or more downfield. Marcus Wheaton, Eli Rogers, and Juju Smith-Schuster had 37 targets in that span, and their target potentials reached over 15%. So the opportunities Jarvis Landry are going to have in this offense is great. He's going to get more yards per reception because they're going to target him more down the field. I think this is the year he opens up his full arsenal. I mean, listen, every time Jarvis Landry needs to be something, he is. He was the touchdown scorer last year. You know, if he needs to be stretched down the field, he gets the job done. He did it in 2015. I'm bullish on Jarvis Landry, guys. I think he's going to be great this season. I think you should start considering him in the 3rd round. So, the wide receiver too. So, this is my one note I'll have. The best case we saw was Arizona Cardinals. Anquan Boldin had 24 games and 226 targets in those 24 games. So he had over 9.4 targets per game as the number 2 in the offense. So Josh Gordon, I'll tell you right now, this offense is going to flow through the receivers. We've seen plenty of times where receivers are dominant, but Todd Haley did it. He's done it before. He did it with Larry Fitzgerald was number 1, Anquan Boldin was number 2. I expect Jarvis Landry to be the number 1. But Boldin in those 2 seasons, he was playing hurt. He only played 24 games out of the 32, but he had 226 targets. He was getting 9.4 targets per game. I expect a very similar situation to happen here. So, I'm still bullish on Josh Gordon. I don't expect him to, obviously I'd rather have Landry over Gordon, but, when we talk about my fades, values, and stuff, I think Gordon's going in the right spot. So, draft away, guys. He still has an opportunity to be good. And then let's go to the tight ends. So the tight ends for me, guys, Heath Miller averaged 5.8 targets per game from 2012 to 2015. So this is very likely that, I think Njoku carves out a role. He's not one of my favorite targets late in the rounds. I think guys Gordon and Landry are going to monopolize the targets in this offense. I think the next options are going to kind of be a blend between Njoku, Hyde, Duke Johnson, Antonio Callaway. And some guys are going to have good weeks. You're not going to find a consistent contributor. But I think Njoku is my next up. I think he's probably a fringe 12, 13 range tight end. I think he is draftable. But you know what? I think right now today, if I'm going with this team, I want Jarvis Landry, Carlos Hyde, and Josh Gordon. And that's about it. I'd rather have Jack Doyle, George Kittle, and George Kittle, probably my only two that I'd pick over Njoku.